Team 10 of 52 teams of 8 rival wisdoms. Help make America wiser and kinder with antique rival wisdom team quotes that have passed the test of time to make humanity great, with words of wisdom to encourage, educate and entertain generations for centuries. Give your kids free easy extra advantage math, spelling and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com. Free easy math wisdom workbooks with Octo-Repetition to grow math self-confidence. Free easy alpha Cypher coded puzzles teach letters, numbers and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate and entertain generations for centuries. Team quote 10.1. The color of the skin is in no way connected with strength of the mind or intellectual powers. Benjamin Banneker, 1731–1806. This clear and powerful statement from Benjamin Banneker carries particular weight coming from a free black man in colonial America who was a self-taught mathematician, astronomer, and almanac author. His own life achievements provided living proof of this truth during a time when many attempted to justify racism through pseudoscientific claims. The quote makes several important points. It directly challenges racist pseudoscience of the era. It states an absolute truth about human capability. It separates physical characteristics from mental ability. It refutes any connection between skin color and intelligence. It asserts the fundamental equality of human potential. I find it particularly meaningful that Banneker used such precise, scientific language, in no way connected. As a scientist and mathematician himself, he understood the importance of exact, unambiguous statements of truth. Have you observed how assumptions about connections between physical characteristics and mental abilities continue to be challenged and disproven in our own time? Team quote 10.2. Cruelty is contagious in uncivilized communities. Harriet Jacobs, 1813–1897. This is a profound quote from Harriet Jacobs, an American abolitionist, writer and activist who was born into slavery and later escaped. Her observation about the infectious nature of cruelty comes from her first-hand experience with the brutal reality of American slavery. In her autobiography, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, published under the pseudonym Linda Brent, Jacobs documented how the institution of slavery corrupted not just those who directly participated in it, but entire communities. She observed how cruelty became normalized and perpetuated through social structures and behaviors, affecting both the enslaved and the enslavers. Her use of the term, uncivilized communities, is particularly pointed. She turns the common 19th-century racist rhetoric about civilization on its head by suggesting that any community that accepts and perpetuates cruelty is, by definition, uncivilized, regardless of its material or technological advancement. This quote remains relevant today as we consider how systemic cruelty can become normalized within communities and institutions, and how resistance to such normalization requires constant vigilance and active opposition. Team quote 10.3. Character, not circumstances, makes the man. Booker T. Washington, 1856–1915. This quote from Booker T. Washington reflects his core philosophy about personal development and success. As an educator, author, and leader who was born into slavery and went on to found Tuskegee Institute, Washington placed great emphasis on individual character development as a path to advancement. The quote encapsulates his belief that one's moral fiber and personal qualities matter more than external conditions or circumstances of birth. This was not just abstract philosophy for Washington. He lived this principle, rising from enslavement to become one of the most influential African American leaders of his time. However, this perspective was also somewhat controversial during his era. While some praised his emphasis on self-reliance and character building, others like W. E. B. Du Bois criticized Washington's approach as potentially accommodating to systemic racism by focusing too heavily on individual responsibility rather than challenging unjust social structures. The tension between emphasizing personal character development versus addressing systemic barriers remains relevant in discussions about social progress today. Washington's quote raises important questions about the relationship between individual agency and societal circumstances in shaping human potential. What's particularly interesting is how Washington maintained this focus on character development, even while acknowledging the severe obstacles faced by African Americans during the post-Reconstruction era. It speaks to his pragmatic approach to advancement through education, economic self-sufficiency, and moral development, even in the face of significant adversity. Team quote 10.4. You have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. Harriet Tubman, 1822-1913. This powerful quote from Harriet Tubman reflects the extraordinary spirit and determination that defined her life's work. As an escaped enslaved person who became one of the most successful conductors of the Underground Railroad, Tubman embodied these very qualities. She speaks of strength, patience, and passion. What makes this quote particularly moving is that it comes from someone who repeatedly risked her life to help others achieve freedom, making an estimated 13 missions to rescue approximately 70 enslaved people. After securing her own freedom, she could have remained safely in the North, but her passion to change the world drove her to return again and again to lead others to freedom. The metaphor of reaching for the stars is especially poignant coming from Tubman, who literally used the North Star to navigate her dangerous journeys southward. Her words aren't just inspirational rhetoric. They're backed by her lived experience of actually changing the world through seemingly impossible acts of courage. The quote's lasting relevance lies in its universal message of empowerment, that transformative change comes from within, and that every person has the innate capacity to make a difference. Tubman's words remind us that world-changing actions often start with the recognition of our own internal resources and potential. Team quote 10.5. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Frederick Douglass, 1818-1895. This powerful quote comes from Frederick Douglass's West India Emancipation speech delivered in 1857, and it encapsulates a core truth he discovered through his extraordinary journey from enslaved person to one of America's most influential abolitionists, authors, and orators. The context of this quote is particularly significant. Douglass wasn't speaking about ordinary day-to-day challenges, but rather the necessary struggle against systemic oppression. In the full speech, he elaborates that power concedes nothing without a demand, making clear that meaningful social progress requires active resistance to injustice. What's fascinating about this quote is its dual application, both to societal progress and personal growth. Douglass himself embodied this principle. His struggle to learn to read while enslaved, despite it being forbidden, his dangerous escape to freedom, and his subsequent battles against slavery and racism all contributed to both his personal development and broader social progress. This idea continues to resonate because it challenges comfortable complacency. Douglass wasn't suggesting that all suffering leads to progress, but rather that meaningful change, whether personal or societal, requires pushing against resistance and overcoming obstacles. His words remain relevant to modern movements for social justice and personal transformation, reminding us that discomfort and struggle are often necessary components of positive change. The enduring power of this quote lies in its unflinching honesty about the price of progress, while simultaneously offering hope. The struggle, while difficult, is not futile but rather the very mechanism of advancement. Team quote 10.6. Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them. Sarah Breedlove, 1867-1919. This quote from Sarah Breedlove, better known as Madam C.J. Walker, reflects the entrepreneurial spirit and determination that made her America's first self-made female millionaire and a groundbreaking Black business leader. Born to formerly enslaved parents just after the Civil War, Breedlove transformed her personal struggle with hair loss into an innovative business empire. Rather than accepting the limited opportunities available to Black women in the post-Reconstruction era, she created her own path to success by developing and marketing hair care products, specifically for Black women. What makes this quote particularly powerful is that it comes from someone who truly lived these words. She didn't just wait for someone to solve her hair care problems. She experimented with her own solutions. She didn't just hope for better economic opportunities. She built a door-to-door sales network that employed thousands of Black women, providing them with rare opportunities for financial independence. The quote's emphasis on active creation, rather than passive waiting, reflects her practical approach to empowerment. Through her business acumen and dedication to helping other women succeed, she demonstrated that opportunities often need to be constructed, rather than simply discovered. Her message remains deeply relevant today, especially for entrepreneurs and those facing systemic barriers. It's a reminder that innovation and initiative can create new possibilities where none seemed to exist before. Team Quote 10.7. All generalizations are dangerous, even this one. Alexander Dumas, 1802–1870. This brilliantly self-referential quote from Alexander Dumas showcases both his wit and his nuanced understanding of human thought. As a mixed-race French writer who faced discrimination despite becoming one of the most widely read French authors, Dumas had personal experience with the harm that generalizations and stereotypes could cause. What makes this quote particularly clever is its paradoxical nature. It's a generalization about generalizations that includes itself in its own critique. This creates a kind of intellectual puzzle that forces us to think more deeply about how we form and express broad conclusions about the world. The quote's power lies in how it uses humor and irony to make a serious point about the dangers of oversimplified thinking. By acknowledging that even this warning against generalizations is itself a generalization, Dumas demonstrates intellectual honesty while highlighting how difficult it is to completely avoid generalizing. This message remains remarkably relevant today, particularly in an era of social media, where complex issues are often reduced to oversimplified statements. It reminds us to be cautious about broad sweeping statements, while acknowledging that some degree of generalization might be unavoidable in human thought and communication. The fact that this insight comes from Dumas, known for works like The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, shows how his understanding of human nature extended well beyond his fiction into philosophical territory. Team Quote 10.8. Religion without humanity is very poor human stuff. Sojourner Truth, 1797–1883. This insightful quote from Sojourner Truth cuts to the heart of how religious practice should intersect with human compassion. As an abolitionist and women's rights activist who was deeply religious herself, Truth had witnessed how religion could be used both to justify oppression and to inspire liberation. Her observation is particularly powerful because she was confronting religious leaders and believers who used Christianity to defend slavery, while she used the same religious texts to argue for human dignity and freedom. The phrase, "very poor human stuff," has a blunt eloquence that dismisses high-minded religious justifications for inhumanity as worthless. What makes this quote especially compelling is Truth's understanding that religion should enhance, rather than diminish, our humanity. She wasn't rejecting religion, as a deeply spiritual person who often preached, but rather calling out the hypocrisy of religious practice that lacks human compassion. The phrase remains strikingly relevant today in addressing how religious beliefs can sometimes be used to justify discrimination or oppression. Truth's words remind us that any interpretation of faith that diminishes human dignity or justifies cruelty has missed the fundamental point of religious and spiritual practice. Her insight also speaks to a broader truth about how principles, whether religious, political, or philosophical, must be grounded in human compassion to have real value. And if you'd like to help raise school test scores and self-confidence, you can give your kids free Easy Extra Advantage math, spelling, and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Free Easy Math Wisdom workbooks with Octo-Repetition to grow math self-confidence. You'll get plenty of repetitive practice of age ranges and averages of our 52 teams of 8 quote authors. Free easy alpha cipher-coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. Can you decode this cipher quote of encouragement using either our learning to spell or just for fun instructions? And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. We offer printed versions and timed videos with background music. Sign up for free weekly emails of 52 teams of antique rival wisdom workbooks with easy math, spelling, and reading practice. And if you'd like to get paid for sharing our wearable wisdoms, keep this in mind. Everyone I know wears a shirt, and most of us change them daily, so change your shirt and change the world. Social equalities are blatantly subliminal antique positive wisdoms repetitively shared without saying a word. This applies to all our wearable shareable wisdoms, like pretty witty baby onesies and baby tees that you and others will see and read multiple times a day. The same is true with pretty witty kids, but they'll also share these wisdoms with anyone that can read at daycare or school. Youthful truths let your kids gain confidence sharing antique wisdoms with their friends. Imagine them sharing words of wisdom with classmates and teachers. I think, therefore I think tees I wear is a super easy way to share words of wisdom that have passed the test of time. Our social equalities help make us all wiser and kinder with blatantly subliminal messages, promoting a more fair and equal opportunity society for all. And don't forget our giftwisdoms.com for birthdays and holidays that makes it easy to share the wisdom with clothing, coffee mugs, and magnets. So do the future a favor by encouraging, educating, and entertaining with words of wisdom that have passed the test of time to make us all wiser and kinder. With wearable wisdoms to fit babies, kids, and adults, you can clothe a whole family, city, or state. Join the 52 of 8 today at 52of8.com.